Growing up, I had always felt like an outsider in my own family. My parents were strict and conservative, and they never quite understood me or my dreams. We had our share of disagreements and fights, but I always hoped that one day we would be able to reconcile and find common ground. But as I grew older, our relationship only grew more strained. When I got married to my ex husband, they disapproved of him and our lifestyle. They wanted me to marry someone from our community, someone who shared their values and beliefs. My ex husband and I were happy at first, but over time, we grew apart. We had different goals and aspirations, and we struggled to communicate with each other. Eventually, we decided to get a divorce, and it was a painful process for both of us. After my divorce, my parents' disapproval of my decisions only grew stronger. They couldn't accept that I had chosen to end my marriage, even though they never approved of it in the first place. In their eyes, divorce was a shameful and taboo topic, and they couldn't fathom why I would choose to go through with it. Despite their lack of involvement in my life, my parents still had strong opinions about how I should live it. They believed that I should have stayed in an unhappy marriage just for the sake of upholding their conservative values. They couldn't see how toxic my relationship had become and how it was slowly draining the life out of me. Their narrow mindedness and lack of empathy made it hard for me to communicate with them. I knew that they would never fully understand my situation and that they would always judge me for my decisions. So I slowly distanced myself from them and eventually cut them out of my life altogether. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary for my own mental health and well being. I knew that I couldn't keep living under the shadow of their expectations and disapproval, and that I needed to find my path in life. I met my current spouse at a work conference, and I was immediately drawn to his warmth and kindness. We struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, we were talking for hours. There was an ease and comfort in our interaction that I had never felt before, and I knew that I wanted to see more of him. We started dating soon after, and it was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. He was patient, understanding, and supportive, and he never made me feel judged or inadequate. He listened to me and encouraged me to be myself, and he never tried to change me or impose his views on me. As our relationship grew, I also got to know his family, and I was pleasantly surprised by how accepting and welcoming they were. They embraced me as one of their own, and they never made me feel like an outsider. They were kind, generous, and supportive, and I felt like I had finally found a family that I could call my own. My current spouse and I also shared many common interests and values, and we were always looking for ways to support and inspire each other. We both believed in the importance of communication, honesty, and respect, and we made sure to prioritize these things in our relationship. It wasn't always easy, of course. We had our share of disagreements and conflicts, but we always found a way to work through them and come out stronger on the other side. We were each other's rock, and we knew that we could always count on each other no matter what. As our wedding approached, we were both excited and nervous. We knew that it was a big step for both of us, and we wanted everything to be perfect. But we also knew that there were potential obstacles, especially when it came to my relationship with my parents. We hoped for the best, but we also prepared ourselves for the worst, knowing that we had each other's backs no matter what. Despite our concerns, we were surprised and relieved when my parents confirmed that they would be attending our wedding. I had honestly not expected them to come, given their previous disapproval of my life choices. It was a pleasant surprise, and I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they had finally come around. As the big day approached, I tried not to let my nerves get the best of me. I focused on the excitement of starting a new chapter with my wonderful partner, surrounded by the love and support of our friends and family. I didn't want anything to dampen the joy of the occasion, especially not my parents' disapproval. Update 1. As we arrived at the wedding venue, I scanned the room for my parents. I had mixed feelings about their presence, but I wanted to make an effort to include them on this special day. However, as I looked around the room, I couldn't find them. When I didn't see them at the ceremony, I thought they weren't going to come, but they showed up late at my wedding reception. I saw them walking towards me with someone unexpected, my ex-husband. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. My parents' presence was expected, but I never imagined they would bring my ex-husband to my wedding. As they approached me, my ex-husband's face revealed mixed emotions. Sadness, anger, and regret all rolled into one. I didn't know what to say or do, and my partner's hand squeezed mine reassuringly. My parents had brought my ex-husband as their plus one, clearly trying to make a statement about their disapproval of my new relationship. I tried to remain composed, but inside I was seething with anger and frustration. To make matters worse, they also had a small ornate box in their hands. I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding as I saw it. I knew my parents well enough to know that they had brought this box for a reason, and it couldn't be good. As we exchanged awkward greetings, my ex-husband didn't say a word. He just stood there looking uncomfortable and out of place. I could sense the tension in the air, and I knew that this was not going to be a pleasant encounter. It wasn't until later in the evening that my parents approached me with the mystery box. They handed it to me with solemn expressions, and I could feel my heart racing as I opened it. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs, letters, and other memorabilia from my past life with my ex-husband. They had once been precious to me, but now they just brought back painful memories. As I looked through the items in the box, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and nostalgia. The photographs were a reminder of happier times, but they were also a painful reminder of the reasons why my ex-husband and I had to end our marriage. The letters were full of apologies and promises that had never been kept, and the trinkets were mementos of a life that I had left behind. Memories of a time when I was younger, more naive, and in a relationship with someone who was not good for me. The photographs showed us smiling and happy, but they also reminded me of the fights, the lies, and the emotional manipulation that had characterized our relationship. As I stood there, in front of my parents holding the mystery box they had brought to my wedding reception, I felt overwhelmed with emotions. My current husband, who had been mingling with our guests, walked over to me and put his arm around my waist, silently offering his support. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain a sense of composure despite the turmoil inside me. My current husband must have sensed my distress as he pulled me closer to him and whispered words of comfort in my ear. As I turned my head to look at him, I could see my parents' expressions change. They immediately tensed up as soon as they saw who my partner was, and I could tell that they disapproved. My husband is not the type of person that my parents would have chosen for me. He is not from the same cultural background, he has tattoos and piercings, and he is not as financially stable as they would have liked. But to me, none of that mattered. I loved him for who he was, and I knew that he loved me just the same. As I look back at my parents, I could see the disappointment in their eyes. They had come to my wedding, but it was clear that they were not there to support me or my new life with my husband. Instead, they were holding on to the past, trying to remind me of a life that I had moved on from. I was met with tension and unease. I could feel their apprehension as I began to speak. The words were difficult to form, but I had to confront them about why they had brought my ex-husband to my wedding and about what was in that little box they had given me. As I spoke, their faces contorted with anger and defensiveness. They tried to deny any wrongdoing and even accused me of overreacting. It was clear that they were not willing to take responsibility for their actions and were more concerned with preserving their image than supporting me on my special day. The confrontation quickly escalated into a heated argument. I tried to remain calm and explain my perspective, but they were not willing to listen. Instead, they continued to attack me and my choices, trying to make me feel guilty for moving on with my life. I could feel my emotions spiraling out of control. My husband saw the tension and tried to intervene to de escalate the situation. He spoke calmly and respectfully to my parents, trying to get them to see that they were causing more harm than good. However, their stubbornness only intensified and their words became even more hurtful. They refused to listen to reason and instead continued to berate me and my choices. It was then that I realized that I had had enough. I took a big step towards them, took a deep breath, and told my parents that I no longer wanted them to be a part of my life. I yelled that their behavior was unacceptable and that I would not tolerate their attempts to control me and my decisions any longer. I asked them to leave the wedding and never contact me again. As I spoke, I could see the shock and disbelief on their faces. They had never expected me to stand up to them in such a manner, and it was clear that they were not prepared for my decision. Despite their protests, I remained firm in my resolve, and eventually they left with my ex-husband in tow. NTA, parents seem to be immigrants or from those cult-like communities with very narrow-minded beliefs. That box was a dick move. You do you, girl. Pay no mind to them. Next story. This requires some context, so I'll keep it short. I, 18, female, have a twin sister, 18, female, who's had the same boyfriend since freshman year. He's also 18. He comes from a wealthy family and had a career lined up for him the day he graduated. My sister is actually pretty responsible, and so is he, which is why it was a shock to everyone when she revealed she was pregnant. She swears they always use protection, and I believe her. She's not the type to skip out on that kind of stuff, nor is he. Well, for obvious reasons, she finished senior year via distance learning. The baby was born right after graduation. I should also mention they are responsible parents, even though they're young. About 2 weeks ago, her boyfriend started his new job and they're about 4 hours away. They moved and have been gone for almost 2 weeks now. They agreed to leave the baby here. I still live at home with my mom. While they move everything. I FaceTime my sister every day and she shows me her daughter's room and it's beautiful. She tells me how much she misses her. 2 days ago, just over a week of moving, my sister told my mom she's going to come get her. My mom said no and that she abandoned her and that she's a gold digger. Then her boyfriend called and my mom said the same thing. They've been going back and forth for 2 days. My sister called me a few hours ago and said she's not playing any more games with mom and that tomorrow she's waking up at 4 a.m. and driving down here to demand her daughter back, and if my mom doesn't give her up, she says she'll get the police involved, get attorneys involved, and do whatever it takes to be reunited with her daughter. After that conversation, I went downstairs to talk to my mom. I said she should give my sister her daughter back. She said, "Your sister abandoned this baby. She doesn't deserve her." My mom said my sister is a gold digger, and if she wanted her kid, she would have got her by now. I reminded her that she does, and I warned my mom that if she doesn't give it to her nicely, my sister is not going to be nice about it. But then my mom said, "Just mind your own business." And to be honest, she kind of had a point. This isn't my business. She also said the baby is what brings her joy and she feels a special connection with her that she guarantees my sister doesn't have. I warned her one last time. "Mom, don't do this." My sister's name is not messing around and this will get ugly. And that was that. I'm starting to think I was wrong to inject myself. It isn't my business, but my sister is right. She deserves her child back, and I did witness a conversation of my mom offering to watch the child while they moved. AITA? Update. It is 8:13 right now where I am, and my sister came and got her daughter. My mom did resist, though. She said, "You're too young to be parents," and gave her the speech about their special connection. And my sister said, "I'm not leaving this house without my daughter." Sister threatened to call the police, and then Mom walked outside to call her friend or something. And my sister just went upstairs into Mom's room, picked up her daughter, and ran out. She's now gone, but I'm meeting her for breakfast soon while she's in town. Mom is crying, saying my daughter is heartless and is too young to be a mom. That's all. I just wanted you all to know my niece is safely reunited with her mother and soon her father as well. I don't think your mother wants to play this game. If your sister shows up with even just a birth certificate, any documentation confirming she's the rightful mother, they could remove the baby from Grandma's house and even pry her from her arms. You didn't do anything wrong. You actually did right by your sister, and your mother is pretty idiotic if she thinks that she can just kidnap someone's child and keep the baby from them. Tell your mom to start getting ready because you have a police escort lined up to take her away, and tell her to remember to have fun in prison. NTA. NTA. And remind your mom that they did not abandon the baby. Your mom agreed, and it sounds like encouraged, your sister and her partner to leave the baby while they got settled. They are settled and ready to pick up their child. Your mom is backing out of that agreement and potentially creating a legal issue for herself. Not for them, for herself. You are not overstepping. You are an adult and living in the home. In some cases, this could also create a legal issue for you. Next story. I, 29, female, was never allowed to have a pet as a child. My mom is not a huge animal person, and my dad swore off getting close to any other animals after losing his beloved childhood dog. I have always loved animals and would beg my parents for a pet for every birthday and holiday from the time I was 4 years old. The answer was always no until I was 13, and the answer was finally yes, so long as I agreed to be the main caretaker. I obviously excitedly agreed and was then introduced to my new best friend, Theo. He was a schnauzer with the most beautiful little face you could ever imagine. I immediately loved him more than anything, and we spent all our time together. I walked him before and after school, fed him breakfast and dinner, gave him baths, and he slept in my bed with me every night. We've never been apart longer than a week. He's been my best friend and honestly my baby. I love him so much, it hurts. About a year ago, I met my now boyfriend at a bar, and we hit it off immediately. He took to Theo instantly and loved him like his own. Theo got older, and with that came new ailments and illnesses. Last week, I noticed he was pooping blood, so I rushed him to the emergency vet, and they diagnosed him with severe pancreatitis, and he had to be admitted overnight. When I picked him up, the vet said the next 24 hours would be critical. I stayed up all night making sure he was breathing. He was very lethargic all the next day. In the middle of the next night, he woke up yelping. I rushed him back to the vet, and he had a new infection and internal bleeding. They said they could do surgery, but at his age, the risk of him dying in the surgery was very high. I tried to call my boyfriend many times, but he sleeps with his sound off, so I got no answer. I called my dad, and he picked up, and I just burst into tears. My dad comforted me and told me to do what I thought was best, but in his opinion, Theo shouldn't live in pain, and it would be better to be with him when he passed and let him die alone in surgery. I made the decision it was best for Theo to put him to sleep peacefully. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I held him the whole time. It was so fast. I immediately vomited when I got home. I laid on the floor with his toys and just sobbed until morning. My boyfriend rushed over when he woke up and saw my messages. He came in and said, "Did you really do it?" I just nodded yes, and he got angry. He started saying things like, "How could you do that to him?" And "He trusted you." He thinks I should have gotten a second opinion and tried the surgery. He says I abandoned him when he needed me most. I feel like I did, too. I let my baby down and I took his life from him. He's also mad I didn't try harder to reach him. I don't know. Maybe I should have waited, but my baby was in pain and I just wasn't thinking about anything else. I miss Theo so much it hurts to breathe sometimes, and I don't know if I did the wrong thing. AITA? Edit. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry for not responding to more comments. I've been overwhelmed with emotions these past couple of weeks, and I'm finding it hard to respond to people even in my everyday life. Your reassurance and support has meant so much to me after losing Theo. And it's what I should have gotten from my boyfriend from the start. I'm going to go visit and stay with my parents for a couple of weeks just to get away. And I think that will also help me clear some things up in my mind. Again, I appreciate all the support, and I'm sorry so many of you relate to this pain. NTA, this is the hardest decision any pet owner has to make regarding their pet, and there's no right answer. Dogs are remarkable at hiding pain, so it's likely that he was suffering more than he let on. If you went through with the surgery, it likely would have only brought him a few months, and that time wouldn't have necessarily been pleasant. He also might have died during surgery. It sounds like you did the right thing by your longtime best friend. He wouldn't want you beating yourself up over it. While your boyfriend's response to you is not good at all, I can understand that he's grieving, but he owes you an apology and he needs to trust you with making the best decision regarding your dog. If he can't do that, there's no way you can have a future together with kids. NTA, from one dog lover who's had to make that gut-wrenching and soul-shattering decision also. I can tell you it's so hard to think clearly when you're faced with making that impossible decision. The thoughts and guilt can be brutal, but in the end, you did your best to try to figure out the best thing to do with circumstances you had laid out before you. You did what you thought was right, best, and most humane for your sweet fur friend. And that cannot ever possibly make you an a-hole. Just the fact that you're worrying about whether you made the right decision shows that you're NTA, because an a-hole wouldn't give a crap. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationship.